So this topic originated from one of my friends who said, "Oh my god, Jason, it's so hard to learn the Japanese language, man. Holy shit." Dude, he didn't even like begin on it. He only spent like 4 days working on that language. Of course you cannot learn a different language in 4 days. Let's be real here, okay? But for this topic, we go back a little bit back, like almost 100 years back actually. So let's say my grandparents, okay, they're from Indonesia. My grandfather was out Nigonea, and he had to move after the war to Japan for his work. So he was going to a special school to learn the language there. That would take him about a year, okay? Fast forward to 1980, 1990. Okay, we didn't have those schools in the country I'm in, so let's say the Netherlands. Let's say you're in the Netherlands and you wanted to learn Japanese. Chances are you're not gonna fucking learn it. The reason is we didn't have the technology to look up Japanese. We could only look at books, okay? We only had books and you could write. That's really, really difficult if you want to learn a different language, to just learn from books. Now fast forward to 2022, like current year, we have so much technology, so much options. You can go to the internet and search up how many fucking characters or letters are in the alphabet of the Japanese language, which is, to my surprise, double the amount of my own language. In modern Japanese, the hiragana and the katakana syllabaries each contain 46 basic characters, or 71 including diacritics, with one or two minor exceptions, of course. But that's double the amount of for my own language. So if you see that, it will be a shock, okay? It will be a shock for most people. They're like, holy shit, there are double the amount of characters of my own language. So we are going to address that. So what is the easiest way to learn the language in 2022? Okay? So the first one is, let's say you watched anime for 10 plus years. Speaking Japanese will be easier for you. Writing, however, not really, and understanding, not really. The reason why it's like that is because you're running subtitles, you're reading subtitles, and the subtitles are not always correct. But how they speak out the Japanese language, that's always correct. You know what I mean? So when you hear Japanese language for over 10 years and you start learning Japanese right now, like the speaking, you would on max take 2 months to fully be able to speak the Japanese language if you actually try. Now we go over to the writing. The writing, that's the most difficult part, which on average took a person between 3 and 6 months. Most people think that's long, but it is actually not that long. That's just spending like 2 or 3 hours a day for like half a year and you'll be able to write correctly modern Japanese. Which is actually not that bad, considering that it took over a year 100 years back. And if you look at 20 years back, it would also take you over a year. Like, it would take you a long time to learn the language. But now there are so many options. Language exchange programs. You can exchange your own language, and then let's say you go on the Netherlands. Let's say you live in the Netherlands and you go on a language exchange program. You can find people that can speak Japanese, and all they want is to learn one of your mother languages, maybe English, maybe Dutch, because they cannot like understand Dutch yet, for instance. That's for me at least then. Like, I could help them with understanding how to speak Dutch, and they would be helping me with understanding Japanese. That's an option. Back in the day, that was not an option. You get what I mean? You can look on the internet. You can look at the characters from the writing system from Japanese on the internet. You can write it down on paper and then you can puzzle with it. Back in the day you didn't have like the options, because now it's modern Japanese that is like different than 100 years back where they used kanji and all that kind of bullshit. Right now it's way easier, man. Like seriously, it is way easier. So how do you start out? How do you start out writing Japanese? Try to think the most easiest words in your all-day life that you use. For instance, use is a good word, or hello, how's it going? I am going, I just come from. Like those kind of words that you use in a daily life the most, those are the most important to learn early on. If you start with the most easiest words from the get-go, then you can progress from that with like the fundamentals of the Japanese language, and then continue growing further out to learn, let's say, harder parts of the Japanese language. That's how I would personally do it. But there are also a couple of other things, like tiny things that could make it easier to understand. So let's say you watch Japanese films on YouTube, for instance. Or videos, better said. Or let's say you listen to Japanese music. It's going really quick, okay? So let's say you listen to a Japanese song, they will sing really, really fucking quick. So then you kind of like have to, how can I say it the best? You have to kind of like understand it at a quick rate, quick pace, which most likely you will not understand, but then you know they actually speak sometimes like that. Like there are Japanese people that really speak really, really quickly, and with this, you can also like understand it a little bit. So why does the Japanese language has three alphabets? That's also a really good question. Men were required to use kanji formal writing, such as official government documents, and would make, how do I say this, notations in the borders to help them remember how to read certain words. These katakana characters were simplified version of kanji. Symbols themselves were pronounced in the same way. That's kind of the way to explain that. Like that's how it goes with the Japanese language and the alphabet. Like it can be difficult at the start, but if you continue improving, you'll get way better. For instance, I can write Japanese pretty well right now, but the speaking it out is really bad for me right now. Like I have to work on that. Probably in 3 months or 4 months from now, I can speak Japanese language. But writing was so much fun, man. Like I don't know, cause I learned the Japanese writing just to read articles. Like I'm not even kidding. Like there's so many Japanese articles that are so interesting, and I was like I had to learn the language at writing, and I could just read the articles. Like I couldn't change let's say Google Translator on or those articles because they didn't have it. Like they didn't have those things on those websites. Like I couldn't do that. And also there were some Japanese manga that I wanted to read, and that was all in Japanese without subtitles. So I'm like, yeah. And there were also like Japanese YouTubers I wanted to listen to, but I couldn't understand them because they didn't have subtitles on and I couldn't turn it on. So they were like speaking Japanese the entire time. And I was like, I can understand it now. Like they had Japanese subtitles, but they had not English subtitles or Dutch subtitles. So it was really like hard to understand, you know what I mean? Like then you have to like go through the entire phase of wanting to learn a language, but it can be fun. Like if you really like it, then you should do it, but if you don't really like it, then you should not do it. But you cannot say it's really, really hard, since everything has been simplified. Like the Japanese language has already been simplified. The kanji were already simplified to katakana. So it's a lot simplified there. You know what I mean? Like, it's easier to write, it's easier to speak. It's just way easier than what it was before. Like, the katakana, which is modern Japanese writing, is way easier than, for instance, kanji and all those things. Like, it's way easier to like write down. It's simplified, of course, but they understand that. And if you go, let's say, to Tokyo, everything like what's written down on boards and those kind of things, and what you read is simplified Japanese. If you go to like the sticks in Japanese, let's say to the other side of Japan, like the side, you know what I mean? Like where a lot of forests are and those kind of bullshit. If you go there, of course, they don't have the simplified Japanese, but if you go near Tokyo, you'll be fine actually with simplified Japanese only. And also, if you are a tourist in Japan and you want to like go around everywhere in Japan, if you can speak simplified Japanese and can write and understand simplified Japanese, you'll make it pretty far there, to be honest. Also, unless you're a high official in the government or something, you don't really need to learn like the difficult kanji and all those kind of things. You can just stick with katakana or hiragana, and then you'll be fine. But that's just what I think about it also. Then there was another topic that I wanted to address, which is one of my friends was also like he wanted to move out to Japan to meet a girl or something, but he said that there is a huge language barrier, which is actually true. Most Japanese girls cannot speak English, okay? They mostly only learn Japanese in school. They have like the kanji version and the simplified version in school there, and it can be really difficult if you're like from another country than Japan and you wanted to date somebody out of Japan. Like, it would be really difficult if you think about it. That's true. That's 100% true. That's why if you really have that attention for going to Japan, I would say you have to learn the language kind of, and you have to also understand all the things they do, like the customs. It is really important to know their customs. Like Japan is really strict, so if you don't know their customs, you can literally fuck yourself in the ass with the system how it works there. Like a good example is, let's say you go to the mall, yeah, and you talk too loud. The guards would literally guide you outside because you talk too loud. Yeah. Let's say you're on the, well, I say metro, but it's the train or whatever shit it's called. Yeah. If you go on there, then you cannot really speak a lot, okay? Like, if you speak too loud or too much, everybody would stare at you and be annoyed. Like, you need to be silent there. The same with eating customs and all those kind of things. Really important. You can literally offend somebody just by placing your eating sticks wrong, okay? You can offend somebody by the way you eat. You can offend somebody really easily. And the thing with foreigners, like, let's say I'm from the Netherlands and I go to Japan, and somebody would be like, and you see a girl you maybe like, and you give them your phone number. Okay, that's kind of normal in in the foreign countries, like let's say the Netherlands. It's very common, okay, that you give somebody your phone number, and you be like, yeah, okay. But in Japan, we see them as shy, okay? Like, they will not call you back if you give them your phone number. They won't. Like, the chances are so low that they will actually do that. Unless you look at Japanese models, but they are out of reach for most people, so don't even waste your time, okay? But yeah, that's kind of how it is with that. Like, you really have to learn the fundamentals of Japan itself too. It's not just the language barrier; it's also the culture. which is really hard to understand for somebody who's not raised in, in Japan. It's the same with, let's say, schools in Japan that both men and women may not shave, or that the class is not based on your, let's say brain capacity, but it's more on your age. So if you go to a class, so let's say 10th grade, everybody would be the same age. The same with university. Everybody from Japan that goes to school, that is at school every single day, gets a university degree. Okay, I'm not even kidding. Okay, they go to high school, they go to university, all on age, all based on age. That's how it goes. And there are also different ways of school. So let's say there are schools that also have foreigners in their school. There are also strictly Japanese schools. There are also women-only schools, men-only schools, which you don't see outside of China and Japan. Let's be real here. That's like the only two places in the entire world that still have that. But it is pretty interesting to like know all those kind of things. Like I'm really interested in the Japanese culture and the Japanese language, but I didn't really spend that much time on learning the language yet, or learning how to write everything perfectly. Like, I'm just beginning, okay? I'm just beginning. Before I'm 30 years old, I wanted to go to Japan at least a couple times, you know what I mean? I want to go there. It is just one of my future dreams to go there. But for now, I just don't care yet. I'm too immature yet, and I'm too young for me personally, I would say, to head out on my own to Japan and have some fun there. I don't know. It's just difficult because of the language barrier. If you go outside of Tokyo and you cannot write or speak the language, it's just so hard. Then you have a guide with you. Like, you need to pay a guide to help you around then. And that can also be very annoying sometimes. But if you have a guide in Japan, they're actually pretty good, because they will literally bring you to the most hot topic places in Japan, and they will go through an entire tour, which is also, not gonna lie, pretty cool if you have never been there before. But if I ever go into in the future Japan, I just want to head out there on my own and look around wherever I want. Okay, that's literally just how I am. I cannot follow a guide plan and be like, yep, let's follow this shit. Or let's say I play a video game, I cannot be like, oh, there's a tutorial here, I have to follow this tutorial to do it in the most efficient way. I don't do it in the most efficient way, I do it in my own way. Same with shooting games. They say you have to play like this, but I don't play like that. I play in my own way. That's just how I am. But that's kind of it for my Japanese discussion. It is really, really interesting if you want to learn the language, or if you're planning to learn the language. And have a great day, everybody. Like, if you sit through this entire discussion with me, and then it's pretty cool, to be honest, that you actually just followed what I wanted to say about it. Have a great day. Hope you're all well, and GG, guys.